Hi, everybody. Welcome one more time to Blue Star Family's Money Mondays webinars. We are very happy to have you here today. This is a program that's dedicated to conversations about finances in the military. I am your usual host, Lydia Whitty, the JP Morgan Chase Financial Wellness Deploy Fellow with Blue Star Family's Campaign for Inclusion initiative. This initiative, let me tell you about it. It's aimed at increasing diversity in leadership within the military and veteran serving organizations. I am a veteran spouse. To be precise, I am an Army veteran spouse and an ardent advocate for foreign born military spouses and their families. Today, we have an interesting topic. We'll be talking about debt, as you can see on your screens. Why does debt continue to be the top stressor within the military and for the American public as well? I honestly would love to know the answer to that as well. For some perspective, please listen to this. From the 2021 Blue Star Families Military Family Lifestyle Survey, 55% of the respondents reported having credit card debt. Of those with credit card debt, 55% reported having more than 5,000 in credit card debt. However, 59% of those who have credit card balances do not pay them off each month. Is there something to deduce from here? Well, let's wait and hear what it is. Today, I'm joined by some amazing panelists that are doing great and profound work in regards to finances in your military communities and outside as well. I can't wait to have them tell you all about their missions. Without further ado, let's meet our panelists. I will start with Yvonne.
Want me to introduce myself?
And I'm going to introduce you, of course.
Okay.
Okay, Yvonne Almond is an executive vice president and community financial engagement officer with Town Bank. She has over 30 years of financial experience, primarily in banking, but also to include serving as an investment associate with the Economic Development Finance Corporation in Washington, D.C., and an assessment auditor with the FDIC. Yvonne received a Bachelor of Business Administration in Finance from the George Washington University and later graduated from the Hampton Road Civic Leadership Institute in 2006. She is a recipient of the 2014 NAACP Presidential Award, 2014 YWCA Women of Distinction Award, the 2019 Inside Business Women in Business Achievement Award, and is a 2021 recipient of the Humanitarian Award presented by Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities. She is a former chair of the Board of Commission of the VHDA, now VHA, and she is now a board member of 11 organizations, including Norfolk State University Foundation. Throughout her career, she regularly conducted credit and business financing seminars for many local colleges, schools, churches, and community groups. She shared the wealth of financial knowledge accumulated throughout her career, and that is now her full-time job. Welcome, Yvonne. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm
Next,
looking forward to today.
thank you, Yvonne. Next, we have the awesome Catherine Welbeck. She goes by Kat. Catherine is the Director of Advocacy and Civil Rights Council at the Student Borrower Protection Center, where her work primarily focuses on examining the student debt crisis through a lens of racial and economic justice. That's amazing, Kat. Prior to joining the SBPC, she worked in the External Affairs Division of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And prior to her legal career, Kat taught fourth grade in Houston, Texas. She received an ABE in sociology and certificate in African American studies from Princeton University and JD from the University of Pennsylvania. Welcome to you, Catherine, and we are so happy to have you with us today.
Thank you, Lydia. It's an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Lastly, but not the least, we have Tom Owiti. Tom is a principal financial planner and wealth management advisor, Perusia Life Matters LLC. He is also an under treasurer, Michigan Conference of the Seventh day Adventist Church. He has been a senior financial analyst for Kellogg and financial advisor with Wells Fargo. As a certified Kingdom advisor, a chartered financial consultant, a registered Series 7 and 66 and licensed life and health insurance, variable life and annuities professional, that's a mouthful. Tom provides Bible based and morally sound planning, advisory, and consultative services to individuals, families, and small businesses in the areas of retirement, investment, insurance, and risk, college education, and 401k rollovers. We have a great team here today. So be prepared for the ride, and thank you for joining us as well. Well, this is where we are going to begin. Our panelists will answer questions, so please feel free to drop any of your questions within the chat. If you have a comment, drop them on. We are glad you could join us today. I will begin with you, Yvonne. But before I ask you any questions, allow me to share some of these facts with you. We'll put it on the screen. I hope we can all see it. Can we see it?
Yes.
From the Blue Star Families, this is where we get it from. The Blue Star Families 2021 Financial Pulse Check. Consumer debt and student debt are the top two immediate financial needs of those in the military. Consumer debt and student debt are the top two immediate financial needs of those in the military. And this cuts across the board from enlisted to officers. Isn't this amazing? I don't understand this, but the first two top immediate needs are these two: consumer debt and student debt combined. Is it easy to say that half of the problem or the financial needs immediately is debt? Is it easy to say so? So, Yvonne, keep that in mind, and as you bear that in mind, you have a unique perspective. As someone with roots in the military, you have definitely engaged with the community, and you might know what happens there. And you also work with the civilian population. Why do you think this is? Why is that causing half or more than half of the problems with finances?
Because we have usually a young population, and to me, a young population is 40 and under. They want everything now. So instead of saving for things, you can just charge it, charge it, charge it. And when I was young, I was guilty of the same thing. I would be in line in the store at a major department store with my things, and they offer you, you can buy this with instant credit. And so I would apply for the instant credit right there while I'm in line. And then I've got a new credit card, and then I've got all of my purchases paid for with that. And I still have my other credit card available to use for the rest of the mall or the rest of my shopping spree. And it just adds up. You get home, you've got all of this stuff, and you're not even thinking about it, but you've got to think about it because eventually it's going to hit you and you're going to have to repay that. Even if you start with repaying some of the smaller amount, but it can add up very quickly when you buy everything with credit card. I mean, everything, a pack of gum, everything is paid for with a credit card and not necessarily a debit card because we know debit cards have pretty much taken the place of checks and that money is coming right out of your bank account. But if you don't have that, you use your credit card and then you don't have to pay for it until the end of the month. And that's a problem. It's a mentality that we have, and it seems to proliferate with what I call younger people. And some of them are still living paycheck to paycheck, and they want instant gratification. So you can be instantly gratified by using your credit card to buy something, and it makes you feel better, which is a problem, because maybe you should look into why does this make you feel better to do this, because there could be some other issues there. And the military and the civilian are the same thing. When you re-up in the military, they give you a lump sum of money. You know, you could get this nice shiny red Corvette, top down, everything, which looks good. Your monthly card payment is almost $1,000 a month, and you've got 4 kids. What kind of car is that for a family with 4 kids? You know, you can't do it, but they're not thinking it through. In the last session, we handed out budget sheets. So you really need to start off with the money that you have coming in, and that's how you plan how you spend for the month, including putting a little bit away for yourself. Otherwise, that debt just balloons. And the fact that your credit card debt is more than what you pay to keep a roof over your head is a problem.
It is a problem. Looking at what we just saw, debt came way before even mortgage and food and
Yes.
everything else. And I'm just like, what is this? Is this an isolated incident? Is it something that just happens in the military? Or is it just, you already shared your perspective. And then I remember the last time we were here talking about financial literacy. Is it a problem with literacy? Is it that we don't know beforehand, before we are given this opportunity to have the cards? Probably by the time you turn 18, then everybody starts, dishing you cards, But is it that we do not have the knowledge that when this time comes, this is how you should behave with money? Is it our parents' problem? Is it our societal problem? Where is the problem?
The parents have the same problem, and nobody's passing that down. I have people who are physicians, doctors. I have one doctor who has the latest Porsche, and he's 2 months behind on his mortgage. His car payment is $1,600 a month, and it's a used car, but he had to have that Porsche, and he's 2 months behind on his mortgage. And he's a surgeon, so it crosses all lines. It's just a matter of prioritizing and wanting that big shiny thing right here, right now.
Right.
Great perspectives there for sure. Very, very interesting that even with education, good education, you still cannot put your hands on why is it not like in your face that this is okay and this is not okay.
When you're at that level, it does tend to be a difference between black and white professionals, because I do find that most of the professionals of color, once they reach that status of an attorney, a doctor, or whatever, they want to have the look of that, whether or not they can afford it or not. And that's how they get into trouble.
Well, I could tell you there's something I hear all the time, that when you get a raise or you get more money, you shouldn't raise your standard of living. That is what I think we do. We try to raise a standard of living. Now I should live in a 4-bedroom house as opposed to a 2-bedroom that was still working just perfectly,
Yes.
Well, Tom,
Yes.
talk to us. I would like for you to tell me also from your perspective, why do you think debt remains a stubborn, I will say it in quotes, why does it remain a stubborn issue for so many?
You know, as I was listening to Yvonne, she said basically what I was going to say. But let me add that it's actually a human behavior problem. Even if you have an education, peer pressure is very strong to a lot of people, and they want to look the part, they want to dress the part, and sometimes we get into debt not necessarily because of bad human indiscipline, but out of some catastrophes. The one major thing that causes people to go into debt is medical bills. Some people go into debt just because they have catastrophic medical situation that they can't afford, and that takes them down the hill. But for the large majority, it is just like Yvonne says, you grow up, you go to the store, man, they're just after you. My kids already, because what I do with my kids is when they get to high school, I make them authorized users of my credit card. So they have very good credit score. And we get credit card invitation all the time. We go to the store, they're being asked to sign up for all these things. And so there's a very big temptation. I would say, and I agree with Yvonne, that for the most part, a lot of our debt, consumer debt particularly, is because of indiscipline and desire to be something, seeking instant gratification, and not willing to wait. I mean, there's a very interesting study about some kids who, I think they were in second grade, they were given the marshmallow test. And over time, they were told, if you wait, we will give you 2. Some waited, some did not wait, some picked it up right away, so they were tracked over time. And based on their responses, you see that those who delayed their gratification actually turned out more prosperous than those who did not want to delay their gratification. So it's a double-edged sword that we need to be very careful to have the appropriate discipline to address.
Thank you, Tom. Something interesting I see in the comments is Kimberly saying, so relatable. A $20 pair of shorts ended up costing me $500 when I was in college. Talking about what the two of you have said, you don't know. It's card money. You don't feel the impact. You don't know what it is to swipe that card.
And
sorry about that, Kimberly, but I hope you learned your lesson.
Yeah, and this is how it works. Very, very simple. They give you a credit card, and then they tell you just pay the minimum balance. Okay, and you are happy. They won't come after you and pay the minimum balance. But now they've been forced to tell you how much it's going to cost you, and I tell you, nobody reads their credit card statements. So you pay your $59, $39, $29. Then the balance which was there last month they calculate interest on that. Next month, you pay another minimum balance, but in the meantime, you've also charged some more. Then you pay the minimum balance. So that plus this adds on compounding interest. It just builds up that in the long run, what you pay is 3, 4 times what you actually bought.
That's interesting. Now, Kimberly also brings to me a perspective that maybe we need to put in mind, like for some military families. She says she knows several service members who got into debt due to a family emergency back home. She also personally, when my local parentis grandmother died unexpectedly, I spent thousands getting back to Korea to be there with family. Now, look at that. Someone has been deployed somewhere, or like what is happening now with the housing crisis. Military families have to pay out of pocket to even have a place to live. So, and they end up being in debt just because of circumstances that are probably way beyond them. We would say, oh, you can plan, you can do this, but there's certain things that you just did not see coming. Well, let's just have that in perspective, and thank you, Kim, for raising those. Tom, what I wanted to ask you as well also is, you're an immigrant.
Right.
You had experience as a financial advisor in another country. I would like to know from you, where do you start from here in America? I want to help our audience just like I would also want to help myself struggling to get acclimated to the American financial system and everything that comes with it, including debt. I know my experience with debt before I got into this country was not the same. I did not think credit cards were so easy to come across. Money was so easy to spend. So talk to us about that, please.
Well, America makes it very easy to get into debt because it's everywhere. Back at home in Kenya, really, credit cards were almost for the rich. So you were not, it was not accessible. However, just so you know, it has changed. Now it is accessible to a lot of people. and a lot of people are getting into debt just the same way it's happening here in America. But coming to this country was an eye opener for me. Fortunately for me, I'd educated myself. I'd read a lot of books on personal finance, which is just an interest that I had. And so while my friends were suffering, I was advising them as well. They're like, I can't do how come this thing I'm paying it, but it's not going down. So I had to educate them on compound interest and how it works. That just paying this minimum balance does not help. And then when they receive every credit card, invitation, they're signing up back, right, left, and center. Left, right, and center. So I told them, look, you need to find out what you need, find out your status before you start signing up for all this debt. Because when you ask for someone to give you money, they're going to ask for it back. And it's not free money. It is an interest you're going to pay on it. In the meantime, you're sitting on couches that are deteriorating, but you're going to be paying for it. You are driving a car that is depreciating, but you're stuck with it. So it's just one of those things that people who come to this country should not be so mesmerized by the availability of credit. They need to find people to help work with them, and that's what I do with a lot of people right now, to just guide them. Those who want to learn, we work with them, but those who don't want to learn, we give them the information. And when they're stuck, we tell them, "Hey, come back. Yeah, we just work with you on how to get out of it."
Thank you. Kat, I'm gonna come to you now. I want to know from you, from your perspective as someone who, you work with a unique focus on student debt. It is generally part of debt as well. I know if I did not have student debt right now, Kat, I'd be debt free. Like, I do not mess with debt since my brother was like, just give people free money. If I didn't have student debt right now, I'd be debt free. I know you focus on this so much. And I also like your focus on the disparities when it comes to people of color and how debt affects them. Please talk to us about that and why you think that is.
Thank you, Lydia. And I really appreciate it too, because Lydia, the framing you brought in, I think you mentioned Kimberly's comment about sometimes debt being, building on what Tom was saying earlier about sometimes debt becomes because of a tragedy or some sort of catastrophe. And student debt it's almost similar. It's a debt that it's almost a necessity, right? Like, one thing I think that makes student debt so unique is that you can do everything right, and you can do actually what you're told to do and have student debt. So many people have student debt because they're told that's the only way to be able to access social mobility, to get the type of job that they want. So it almost becomes a sort of necessity in order to advance your career, in order to get opportunity in this country so many times. And so it's a really unique form of debt where so many people are so young, and we also know they're older adults with student debt, whether it's their own debt or, going back to school to get credentials, but so many young people starting off their lives and their careers with debt. Like you said, Lydia, so many people will say, I don't have a clean slate because since 18 years old, I had student debt. And it's so much about who has access to wealth as to who has student debt. And I think that's where we also really see a lot of the racial disparities, because in this country for so long, we know that certain communities, particularly communities of color, and especially Black communities, were denied opportunities for wealth building, whether that was through redlining, whether that was through a lack of access to capital to create small businesses, right? Even being able to get a small loan to be able to open a small business, to be able to have entrepreneurship. We know there are so many ways that communities of color were actually locked out of wealth building. And the way we see that play into student debt is that we have this racial wealth gap in our country where Black households, Latino households literally have a fraction, about a tenth of the wealth of white households in this country. So what that means when it's time for people to go to school, whereas some students can rely on familial wealth to be able to pay for school and, their parents can write a check for them to go to school, so many other students have to actually take on debt to be able to access that next level of economic opportunity. And so what that looks like in numbers, nearly 90% of Black students borrow to go to college. And that's in comparison to about 66% of white students. And so what we see is that when those students go to school, so we see Black students taking on more debt and borrowing. So a higher percentage of Black students borrow to go to school and borrow at higher rates. So when they leave school and they graduate, they have more debt. And so again, this is before you get into any of the other consumer debt. They already are starting with student debt. And so what does that mean? It cuts off other opportunities for wealth creation over your lifetime, because rather than saving, investing in your retirement, maybe trying to start a small business, you're spending a portion, whether it's 10, 15% of your discretionary income or more every single month to pay down the student loan balance that was just your gateway into entry. And so what ends up happening is when it's time for you to start a family, when it's time for you to look for your kids to go to school, what happens? You've accumulated less wealth over your lifetime, which again makes it more likely then that your children might have to borrow to actually be able to go to school. And actually we see this now, the proportion of Black parents in this country who are Parent Plus borrowers, which is a loan that, again, parents take out to help their children go to school. And so not only, do we have these lasting effects of, less wealth creation, but imagine as you're nearing retirement, having to take on more debt just so your children can go to school, and they might have debt on their own. And so we can really see there's this really, scary and almost like perpetuating cycle of debt that, again, all starts about who has wealth and who has access to wealth in this country. And so also happy to talk again about the policies around student debt and why it's really important that we change this, and even how we fund higher education and who has access to it.
Thank you, Yvonne. I love that perspective. I remember when we were talking about debt, I think early last month, it came out so clearly in the research I was doing that the impact of that debt on wealth generation and generational wealth is so much, the impact on Black and brown or people of color is so heavy, especially when you think of something like someone saying, a percentage of people, maybe more than 40% of Latinas saying, I cannot start a family right now because I have to pay this debt. Or a Black family saying, I cannot buy a house now because I have this debt. Or that affecting their credit scores and all that. So the ripple effect, as you say, is so much more than we can actually think of right now or see. It's not easily visible, but it is there. Thank you for that perspective. I want to remind our viewers, if you're joining us, we're talking about debt. Please include your comments in the chat and we'll be happy to share them. Or if you have a question, we'll be happy to answer them. This brings us to what I'd say is the most important reason why we're here today. What can we do about debt? I'm going to come back to you, Yvonne. What can we do about debt? Hold on, I'm gonna I have to navigate a lot of other things here at the same time. Give me a second. I'm desperate to hear this. What should we do? How does someone get to a good place with debt? And with that, I mean, what would you like to tell that person drowning in debt, as the statistics show, to do today, right now?
To know exactly what debt you have. In their mind, they know have debt for this card, that card, they owe this, they owe that. But as we said in the last session, you need to write it down. Write down each card, each whatever, and the debt that you have, and then start to prioritize whittling away at that. Because as Kat was just saying, the parents borrow, this is generational. There are people who are having their Social Security checks garnished for student loans, federal student loans that they owed. They can't take their whole Social Security check, but they are having Social Security checks garnished for student loan payments. And so you know how far back that goes. These people are at least 65 years old to have their things garnished. When President Obama became president, that's when he paid off his student loans. He still had student loan debt when he was running for president. And so it goes, it just cuts across the gamut, but know what you have. Some people think, well, I'll just file bankruptcy. Well, there are rules for bankruptcy too, and you need to think about whether or not you want that on your record for at least 12 years, to have to pay cash for everything. Plus, if you've run up your credit cards in the past 90 days, and this all changes very quickly, and Kat's an attorney, so she probably knows how quickly the laws for bankruptcy changes. But at one time, people would run up their credit card, and when they filed bankruptcy, because I was sitting in bankruptcy court as a banker, and the judge said, anything that you ran up for the last 90 days cannot be part of the bankruptcy. You still have to pay that. You had people there who you purchased appliances. They were there and they wanted their refrigerator back. They wanted their stove back. They wanted their appliances back, and they wanted their furniture back. So filing bankruptcy is something that needs to be thought of very carefully also. But know what debt you have and try to whittle away at it. They always say, look at the amount that has the highest interest rate and the highest amount and start paying that down. That can work too, but it's still kind of depressing to see all that debt out there. So sometimes if you have a small card with a small amount, pay that off, and then you have a sense of accomplishment when that has paid off. Put that card away and then start working on the others. But you have to see some progress, because mentally, and we see that, this affects you mentally, affects your household, your relationships, and everything. But if you can get that little bit, you've paid off this one little credit card, you feel good about that. That helps everybody. So know what you have and start to whittle away at it. And bankruptcy should not be the first option that you have. I have friends who are my age who filed bankruptcy 2, 3, and 4 times. They don't own a house. They've got all the jewelry. They've got all the this, that. And they told me that, that I'm just rich. That's why I haven't filed bankruptcy. Well, no, I try to budget. Like I tried to get you to budget. So some of them are friends, but let's say, and family, but thank heavens for caller ID. That's what
Would it be, I think what you talked about, I read it somewhere about debt snowballing. Is that like you start with the smallest as you go towards the biggest? I think, as you say, having a sense of accomplishment gives you, like the motivation. Okay, I did that. I can do this. I can do this.
Yes.
It's just like a child. It's like motivating them with one candy or a star, a sticker or something. So thank you so much for that. Kat, I'll want to come back to you now. Just as I asked Yvonne, I know student debt is a huge thing. What do you think one should do to be able to have debt in check? And what are some of the immediate steps, you talk about with some of the people that you encounter or in your policy work?
That is a really great question. So I'll start with like immediate steps, and then I'll go to the policy part of it. But because personally, I want to start with the immediate steps because I really want to borrow something that Yvonne said, and I really loved with her talking about what type of debt you have. And I really kind of want to lean on that because, again, and also something that Yvonne said about like this could be really stressful. It could be really mentally taxing to have debt, to be thinking about your debt and almost feel like seeing that number and feeling hopeless. And so, one, in terms of knowing what type of debt you have, borrowing on that, and also knowing what type of programs are available to you. There are a lot of, especially for people who have federal student loans, and the vast majority of people who have student loans have federal student loans. There are a lot of pathways to relief that people may not know about that can help them get their debt reduced, their debt canceled, can help them get back on track. So whether that's, public service loan forgiveness and working in the public service and being able to get the entirety of your debt balance canceled after 10 years in service, and that includes military service, very important to know, or whether it's knowing about access to an income-driven repayment plan. I know a lot of times people see that initial payment and they say, you know what, my salary does not match what that monthly payment is. If you have a federal student loan, you're entitled to an income-driven repayment plan. that's capped at either 10 or 15% of your discretionary income, depending on which which plan you're in. And again, the administration recently announced that there are going to be changes to even make these plans more affordable. So just knowing that you have access to those, or an example that Yvonne brought up about people's, Social Security getting garnished, or people who are in default. So if you fall more than 9 months behind on a federal student loan, you can go into default, and that can have really negative consequences in addition to credit reporting, but also, wage garnishment, Social Security garnishment. But there are programs now during the current payment pause that we're in to help people who are in default get back in regular repayment, so they won't continue to experience garnishment when they go back in. So there really is important to know, and sometimes it's scary to look at that debt. It's scary, to go in, but really knowing what you have so you can know what type of programs are available to you that can help you. And then on the policy piece, is I think something that we've seen in this past year is that, when people talk more about their debt, sometimes people don't like to talk about debt. That's why, Lydia, I love that you're having Debt Mondays. Being and it's really important, because the more that we talk about it, the more that people, say, I have debt and this shouldn't be this way. The more people say, why don't we invest in higher education the way that we used to? And so we shouldn't have a student debt crisis. And so the more that we talk about this, the more that we tell our stories, that's really what we're seeing in a wave of policy change, is because people shared their stories and said, this shouldn't be this way. And so there's a piece about how do you manage this personally, but there's also the piece of how can we collectively talk to our government about making this a better for student loan borrowers, better for people who want to get an education without being in a lifetime of debt.
Thank you, Kat. Very, very great insights there. They say knowledge is power, but someone recently told me knowledge is not power. The use of knowledge is power. If you don't use that knowledge, it's not powerful at all. It's only as much as you use it that it makes any sense. So please, because I know we share a lot of resources, we share a lot of places. Please visit this, please go do this, please do that. Yes, you have now the knowledge, but what have you done with that knowledge to now convert it into a power that you have? And that is why we are here, to encourage you to constantly use the resources and the knowledge and the shared everything, that the tips that these experts are sharing. I'm not an expert, but these guys are, with years and years of experience. Please listen and put it into action. Then that becomes your power. Tom, we will not leave you out of this. Share with us some of the things that we need to think about first, and how we can be able to avoid or manage debt. And if there are any resources as well, just like Kat and Yvonne have shared, please share with us.
Yeah, I will share a resource on the online there, so they can see that how to live within your means. Let me just say something about what you said about knowledge. And I tell people and my kids the same thing, that knowledge is potential power. What you use, something that potential means it is there, but you need to use it. It's like a rock on a hill. If it sits on a hill there, it's just potential power. But when you release it, it can smash things on the road, on the way, as it goes. That's what it does as it moves on, when you release that power and use it. So really, the easiest thing I can say is live within your means. Now, that is a tough sell in this society where we live on instant gratification. But another way of saying it, do not spend more than you earn. Because if you spend more than you earn, it means you've already borrowed from what you're going to earn the next month, and so, or the next 2 weeks. So just be careful about that. The other thing is, like Yvonne said, you need to save for what you want. And practice what is called delayed gratification. Like I told you, I like to use the Bible a lot to share with people. So in Proverbs 13:12, it says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when the longing is fulfilled, it is a tree of life. In other words, when you delay gratification, you feel like, whoa, I'm missing out. I'm just like, I really need to get it. But if you save your money and you're able to buy it so you don't have to be in debt, now you can enjoy it. There's a lot of freedom in being debt-free. We need to be disciplined. And again, I will echo both what Kat and Yvonne said, that you need to know the kind of debt that you have and track it. Track how you spend your money. Now the credit cards make it easier for us to track. You can actually categorize your expenses. And I'll add one more resource later on, where Mint.com can help you track it. Your banks now, credit unions especially, give opportunities for people to be able to put their finances together and track those expenses. If you track your expenses, you'll be able to know. If you're not disciplined enough, go and withdraw cash and go spend the cash that you have. It's actually more painful spending the cash than spending on a card, because a card gives you false security that you have the money. So go withdraw the $200 and then go spend it. Like I hear people say, "Oh, it's only $20. I just charge it." It's different when you have cash in your hand and you're gonna pay it. So we need to think about that. Now, if you live in a house, say maybe you have a house that is too big than you need, you just maybe your husband and wife, I don't know why you need a 4-bedroom house. I don't know how often your kids come or your friends come, but just live within your means and grow as time goes. Do not desire. The other thing I would say is really very important is to have a sense of your self-worth. Who are you? What are you worth? Some people are worth their clothes, worth their shoes, worth their cars, worth their house, worth these material things. If you don't have that sense of, internal security, you will be falling for peer pressure. So again, it's easier said than done, but we need to have that sense of who we are. If you are a couple, and in the military, sometimes maybe your spouse remains behind when you go, try to live off one income and leave the other income for those things that you like to do in the future. I mean, if you work out and very well disciplined, you live off one income, and then the other income is supplemental to do all the things that you want. It is so liberating to be able to just go and spend cash. When I was in debt, consumer debt, I put aside $700 every month to pay it out. And I was like 5 months away from it. And then we had this nice deal of, leather couches, just about $2,100. And there was the temptation to go for it. But then I told my wife, look, we can buy those couches cash. But you know what? Let's just finish this. Let me finish this thing. I waited those 5 months. By the time it was time to buy them, I've paid the 5 months. We waited about a year, and I paid off my debt. As that 700, since I was already spending it, I started keeping it aside. By the time I came to buy the couches, I took the money, and guess what? I paid $1,500 for them, $600 saved, and I have it debt free, clear. I owe nobody any money. But you know what? I could have picked it up, a year before, and I would have been a year into it, and I would have not finished my other debt. I would have been in another debt as well. So we just need to have those kind of discipline. And again, prioritize your debt repayment. Like Yvonne said, again, look at what is most important and get rid of it. Dave Ramsey and I agree on one fundamental thing. When you are in debt, go after that debt with gazelle intensity. Have you watched these movies of a cheetah coming after a gazelle or an impala? It's a matter of life and death. The impala runs like everything depends on it. So that's how we need to run out of it. Actually, that's a Bible principle in, I think, Proverbs chapter 6, verse 1 to 5, tells us if you co-sign for somebody and you're in debt, find every single way to get out of that with gazelle intensity. Life depends on it. So there are some thoughts I just wanted to share with you. One more thing, weigh the cost versus the benefit of each debt that you take. Because you can take a debt for a car versus debt to start a business. You can take debt for school versus debt to buy a pair of shoes which you're going to be stepping on or a pair of pants you're going to be sitting on. Think about what is the cost of the debt. Look at how much is it the APR, the interest you're going to be paying on it. Think about those things and have a plan. When you borrow debt, at every point you borrow any debt, be able to have a plan already what you are going to do to pay it down. That's a very important thing to do.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you so much. I'm learning a lot today. So I'm really glad I had you on. And our chat is also blowing up. People are having, thumbs up and they're appreciating everything you're saying. Brian is saying, awesome lesson, guys. Applied knowledge is power. Live within your means, practice delay gratification, track your expenses. Thank you, Brian, for your comments, and the rest of you for liking and loving what's going on. We have Lashata De Torres. Pardon me if I didn't say, I didn't pronounce your name properly, but she has a question that I would ask any of you to just go at it. How do you fight debt if this? I believe if the debt belongs to your military spouse who is still active duty, there is a separation process going on. So I don't know, separation process doesn't. I don't know whether they are separating from the military or separating as a couple. But I want to imagine that it would be an issue if only the separation is the couples. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with a debt that belongs to a spouse?
And I will start this with a disclaimer. I am not allowed in my capacity to give individual advice, but I'm going to try, Lashata, to answer your question, answer some scenarios around your question. I saw another question in the chat too that you may have dropped about people who have been in debt, and have student debt for a long time. Is there a pathway for that being canceled? So I'm going to answer this in two parts. There is a program called income-driven repayment. And right now, and so the way income-driven repayment plans work, payments are capped at 10 or 15% of your income. Depending on which plan you're in, after 20 or 25 years of repayment, your debt is supposed to be canceled. We know because there are many people who have been in repayment on their federal student loans for longer than 20 or 25 years. That has not always happened. So what the Department of Education has done this year, they're doing a one-time account adjustment for people to see if they can get credit for extra months of income-driven repayment. And so there will be a full account readjustment in July. There's some more details. I will share resources that our organization has with Lydia, so she can share them after today's call. But if that is one of the scenarios you're talking about, that is one pathway. Two, again, because I don't know the specifics and I can't give specifics on your exact scenario, but if your spouse has student loan debt, the debt is solely in their name, and your spouse is in active duty, they can possibly qualify for public service loan forgiveness. The public service loan forgiveness program is you work 10 years in public service, and after 10 years, your debt is canceled. So, for example, if you have a spouse that is on active duty service or has been for any period since October 1st of 2007, when the program started, they can get credit for that service towards debt cancellation. And so if that debt, again, so your spouse worked in active duty during the periods, say, when they weren't in active duty, they also worked in some other form of public service. You can add those times together. Periods for public service loan forgiveness do not have to be consecutive. They just have to be cumulative. So if you have 120 qualifying payments while in qualified employment, which is public service employment, which includes active duty service, you can get credit for public service loan forgiveness. So as long as, again, it's the spouse's debt, the spouse's career, for active duty. In terms of, there are some spouses, it's a very small percentage of people who had a loan called a spousal consolidation loan. So it's people who consolidated their student loan debt with their spouse's student loan debt. That is a little bit trickier. What I will advise you to do is if that is your scenario where you have student loan debt, your spouse has student loan debt, and your spouse is an active duty service member, I would advise you to visit the Federal Student Aid website. And so the Federal Student Aid is the Department of Education's Federal Student Aid Office at studentaid.gov and look up spousal consolidation, and you should get some more information about spousal consolidation loans, and that could tell you a little bit more about the scenario if that is it. But if it's the first one case where your spouse has student loan debt, it's in your spouse's name, and your spouse works in public service, I would really, really encourage you to look up the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, because that could really, really benefit you. But again, scenarios, I don't know if that's your exact question, but hopefully could apply to that.
And I can address just the debt that's not student loan debt. Each of you has your own credit file for your credit report. If you have joint credit, then you will, you and your spouse are both responsible for that, and they will go after either one of you. But you also have your own credit file. So if you have debt that is just in your name, your spouse has debt that is just in your spouse's name, they're responsible for that, and you are not legally obligated to their debt that is in their name. And even if you, as a spouse, file for a loan, you want to get a loan, and you're doing it on your own, the organization, like the bank, your credit union, or whatever, cannot run a joint credit report if it's just you. You both have to be signing on an application to have a joint credit report pulled. If they pull a joint credit report for you, when you're just applying for a loan, that institution is fined heavily for doing that. So you can apply for debt on your own. You can file for bankruptcy on your own, which will not affect your spouse's debt unless the debt is joint. So you do have your own personal credit file, and if I were you, I would run your own credit file to see what you are responsible for. If there is joint debt on that, it's going to show up on your personal credit report, but otherwise you have your own file. So take a look at that and know where you stand so that you can protect yourself.
Thank you, Yvonne. Tom, she also had asked before, I think Kat was able to catch it. Is there such an option for debt that goes so old that people don't have to pay it anymore?
I don't think debt gets that old, except for the programs that Kat talked about, where after you have so many months of credit, you'll be able to get some of them written off. And again, you can also negotiate your debt with your whoever your lender is. Some are willing, because sometimes the cost of managing the debt can be so expensive as well for them. So you can always go and renegotiate the loans. You can consolidate. You can, but yeah, generally debt, once you have it, you pay. After you die, if you don't die, then you will have to pay it generally for most parts. The other time is they would send it to credit bureau, what do they call them? I'm not forgetting the name. They buy their debt, then there's collection agencies.
Mm-hmm.
So then they won't ask you for any more money, but the collection agency will be calling you and asking you for their money.
You can also tell them not to call you if it's past, if it's not on your credit report anymore.
Yeah.
They will sell those receivables, and they will come back to you and say, well, we can settle with you. If you pay anything, even $1, it's going to be back active on your credit report. But if it's not on your credit report, you might be able to get away with not paying it. But in the meantime, that's probably not a good idea. So, but there are cases where people have left it. It's off of their credit report after about 7 years. If you can take 7 years worth of harassment, and some people do, but it's off the credit report. And unless you respond to a request for payment, then it's not reactivated.
Thank you, guys. That's where I was headed. What about the 7-year rule? I keep hearing about 7-year rule, 7-year rule. Now you just made it clear. I don't think I can stand harassment. Good luck. Good luck if you're going that route. Well, we've talked so much, and I love where we're going. Just a quick, I'd just like our panelists to help us understand the consequences of the decisions we make, or the ones that we don't make regarding debt. So I will ask the same question, not the same, but to all of you together, because I see we are almost running out of time here, but I would like to get this in. So Yvonne, Why should I care about the amount of debt I have and why? And to you, Tom, as a certified kingdom advisor, that's a special title. What does the Bible say about debt? And how can we use this principle to help us understand? And what are the consequences of not following that? And to Kat, please remember this question. How does student loan affect our financial lives? Does it matter the type of student debt? And what would be your advice on those who are thinking about getting student debt? So those three questions, I will start with you, Yvonne.
You should care about the debt that you have because it's going to affect all aspects of your life, your ability to where you live, to be able to purchase a home, a car, a job. Because if you have a lot of debt, if you're going into the financial industry, when they run that credit report and that credit report is as tall as you are, then you've got some problems. And I have seen credit reports that are as tall as the people coming in here. They owe everybody. That is not a good sign. And when you are, if you're not married, if you're going to be married, know who you're marrying. If your spouse's credit report is as tall as you are, then you may have a problem there too. You need to know where you stand there. That happens a lot. People get married and then suddenly they think they're responsible for all this debt. They've married somebody who just can't save a dime. So it will affect all aspects of your life.
They look good from far, but far from God.
Yeah, right car, the right this. They don't even own the shirt on your back. I have seen people when I was doing taxes, the interest on their credit card was all over $100,000 a year. That's just the interest on their credit card. So imagine how much debt they are in to owe that much on their credit card. That's a lot.
Right.
That's a lot. You better watch out. Watch your back, guys, before you marry. Some might be marrying you for just that. Tom, to
Yeah.
you.
You know, there's a lot of wisdom in the Bible. I've given you two verses already. One of them is Proverbs 13, verse 12, which says that hope deferred makes the heart sick, but the longing is when the longing is fulfilled, it is like life, like a tree of life. That means that we need to cultivate the attitude of delaying our gratification so we can enjoy it later on. Also, I talked about be careful about the debt you get into, especially the debt of co-signing. Proverbs 6, verse 1 to 5 tells us, do not enter into debt which you do not need. But if you have done that, find every way possible to get out of that kind of debt. And also, Proverbs 22, verse 26 and 27 says the same thing. Do not be a co-signer for someone. And I'm not saying if it's your child or whatever, but just make sure that when you're co-signing, know for sure that if the borrower defaults, you are on the hook for that money. So be careful about that. Now, one is which is very important to me is Proverbs 22, verse 7. It says that the borrower is a servant to the who? The lender. In other words, if you think about when you're in debt, when you get your paycheck, what do you think about first? Is who you're going to pay before you even think about your own personal necessities. So do not, debt is enslaving. Do not be a slave to others because of debt. The last verse I will share with you here is Psalm 37, verse 21. This is about being a person of integrity. It says that the wicked borrow and does not pay, but the righteous one is the righteous one shares and shows mercy and gives. So do not be that wicked person who borrows and refuses to pay. If you borrow, make sure you pay. But you want to be in a place where you have enough for yourself, for people close to you, and also for people who are outside of you, where you can share with them and be gracious and merciful to them. Those are the biblical principles I can share with you on this day about that.
Thank you, Tom. Kat, over to you.
So I know we kind of covered at the top the ways that student debt can affect other areas of your life. So again, and Yvonne just went over some like home ownership, the ability to start a business, the ability to save for retirement, so many other things. It just essentially makes it more difficult to accumulate wealth in your lifetime. But one really important thing I do want people to know about having student loan debt, again, is knowing what type of student loan debt that you have. The vast majority of people who have student loans have federal student loans. So those are owned by the federal government. And they come with certain benefits and privileges. So again, the right to an income-driven repayment plan, the right to have your debt canceled after a certain amount of time in repayment, whether that's through income-driven repayment or public service loan forgiveness, the right to different federal programs where you might be able to get your debt canceled. And so one thing to note before you either take out a private loan for your education, sometimes people take those out for other expenses beyond, tuition fees. And then some people refinance into private loans because they offer lower interest rates, or it might seem like you can pay down your debt faster. The one thing I will caution you is to always know what works best for your scenario, because there are many people who find out they refinance their loans because it offered them a better pathway to repayment, not knowing they worked in public service and could have gotten their entire debt balance canceled after 10 years. Or people who didn't know, they may have refinanced into a private loan, but maybe hit a bit of a rough spot and weren't able to make their loan payment for a couple of months. On a private loan, those consequences are different, whereas in a federal loan, you might be able to get access to either a low IDR payment or a $0 IDR payment, depending on like where your income falls. And so really caution people to know what type of loan you have, and then what kind of rights, privileges, and benefits come with that. So before you make any kind of decision about what type of loan you're going to have, just making sure you know the rights and benefits that come with either one.
Thank you, Kat. I want to say today has been amazing. I have personally learned quite a bit. Thank you to our panelists for some amazing insights, some amazing resources, and just sharing with us their knowledge, and for taking your time to be here. Thank you so much, Kat. Thank you, Yvonne. And thank you, Tom, for being passionate about helping our communities and including our main audience, which is our military families. This is an important topic that impacts so many. We would also love to hear from you, our audience. If you have some questions to ask, please send them my way. I will share with you my email address. You can send those to me. If you have a resource to share that you know might benefit our audience, please do so. Share it right here or share it with me later. I'd be able to put it on our financial resources page. I have shared the link to that page. It has tons and tons of resources for you. Please visit it. Now, remember, we will continue to discuss and to cover a lot of subjects like this. So I would want to urge you to join us for our next Money Monday session, which will be on November 28th. It's only 2 weeks. We will be discussing housing. We alluded to some of the challenges going on. So come, let's learn why access to quality housing in a timely manner continues to cause many military families not just a lot of money out of pocket and a lot of stress too, but also what the relevant authorities are doing to avert this crisis. I know you don't want to miss that. I am going to make sure you don't miss that. Thank you again. And from everyone at Blue Star Families, have a great day. As always, if not you, who? And if not now, when? Please turn the knowledge you have into power. See you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.